Multiplying a binomial by a binomial is another method of finding the products of algebraic expressions, and question 2 will focus on doing such products. The question reads as follows: simplify the following fully. So if we look at question 2.1, we are given here 4x minus 2y x plus 3y. Now, before we can do this question, let's break it down so that we can understand what's happening here. In these brackets, I have 4x, which is a term, and I have negative 2y, which is another term. So I have two terms. We call this whole thing a binomial. And the second one is also a binomial because it has two terms, x and 3y. And these two terms, this binomial and these binomials, are in brackets. And we know that in mathematics, brackets means multiplication. So essentially what we're doing here is that we're multiplying these two binomials. Hence we say it's a multiplication of binomial and a binomial. Now, to simplify this expression, because there's a need for simplification, it is complicated when it's sitting like that in brackets. So to simplify this, naturally what you would think of would be to take the 4x and multiply it with this whole binomial. Meaning I'm going to have, open bracket, x plus 3y. And take this whole negative 2y and multiply it with that binomial of x plus 3y. So that means I'll have a 2y here, but I'm multiplying it with a x plus 3y. So these two expressions, they're really the same. What I've done, I've just rearranged my terms. Then at this stage, it should be clear to you from the previous work that we have done that this is a monomial multiplied by a binomial, right? And this calls for the use of a distributive law, where we're going to take this 4x and multiply it with the x, so that we have x squared. And we take the 4x and distribute it to 3y as well. When we do that, we know that we're going to have a positive, and the 4 times the 3 will give us a 12, and then the x and the y will just be xy. They will just multiply each other. Remember that space means multiplication, and there's a space here. So all these terms are multiplying each other. We do the same in this second binomial, where we're going to have the negative 2y multiplying the x, so that we're going to have 2xy as well. Now here we're having a negative 2y multiplying the 3y. Now the negative 2 and the 3 will give me a negative 6, so that I have y squared. Now at this stage, I'll group my like terms, because I can see here that the 12xy and the negative 2xy, they are like terms, that when I combine them, they actually give me a 10xy. So that will be my final answer, to say I have x squared plus 10xy minus 6xy, and this is simplified. Now this question is marked over 2 marks, so that means 1 mark will come from the simplification. The fact that you simplified here, and the other mark will come from the final answer. Now if we inspect our answer, we can see here that we have a square number here, because we have a number that has a square. Even the 4 here is like a 2 to the power 2. And if you inspect this part of this question as well, is a square number. We have y to the power 2. And here we just have a number that came through the combination of the two. Now, this scrutinization of the question actually helps us to find another method of solving this expression. So let me rewrite this expression so that I can explore this method or teach you this second method. The question was 4x minus 2y x plus 3y. Now, from our inspection, we know that I can multiply this term and this term, right? So we call these terms the first terms. If you look at this expression, if we look at this expression, 4x is the first term. If we look at this expression, x is the first term. So if I multiply this term and this term, right, it will be the first terms. So that means I'll have here 4x squared, right? I'm doing that because from my inspection, I know that I have a square number. So it's like I can square this and that. I can multiply them, not square, right? The second thing that I'll do is that I'll look at the outer terms in the two expressions. 4x is the outer term in this expression, is the term that is at the outside. What I'm saying is that there's no any other term here. It's on the outside. Also, if you look at this part of the binomial, you would see that 3y is the outer term, right? There's no any other term here. It's the only outer term here, right? So I'm going to multiply those two. So here we're going to say the 4x multiplied by the 3y, so that I have now plus 12xy. And we call this the outer terms. Now, if I then multiply the inner terms, like if I multiply this negative 2y and this xy, now with these two terms, they are inner terms, right? Because they are here in the inside of these binomials, right? Now I'm going to multiply this by that. These are inner terms. So this will give me a negative 2xy. Then I multiply the last terms. If you look at this binomial, the negative 2y and the 3y are the last terms, right? Because this is the first term, this is the last term in this binomial. This is the first term, this is the last term in this binomial. So now we're going to multiply these two, right? We call them the last terms. So when I multiply those, I'll have a negative 2y multiplied by 3y, and that will give me a negative 6y squared. And at this stage, I then have an expression that has like terms here, like we did in the previous one, so that I'm going to have x squared, and here is just going to be a plus 10xy minus 6y squared. Here we call this method by inspection. We say we solved this by inspection. After analyzing the final answer, we can see that the pattern is such that we multiply the first term and the first term. Then we multiply the outer term and the outer term. Then we multiply the inner terms and multiply the last terms. We should get the same expression as what we have found at the top. Now this method, we call it FOIL. The F, the O, the I, and the L. To say this is the first term, the outer term, the inner term, and the last term. It becomes a quicker method when you have to solve expressions of this sort, because they'll give you 1 mark for simplification and the final 1 mark for the final answer. Now we'll jump to the second question, 2.2, and we are given x minus y, x plus y. Again, the first thing that you'll naturally think here is to really isolate the x to say x multiplied by x plus y, right? So I'm saying this x multiplied by the whole thing here. Then I'll then isolate the y, negative y, and multiply with the x plus y. Again, I'm saying negative y multiplied by the whole thing here. That's another way of writing this expression. Now, this allows me to do the distributive law because I can multiply this with that and this with that. So the x times the x will be the x squared, x times x, and then x times y, it will simply be plus xy. Now here we do the distributive law again on this part of the expression to say negative y times x. That should give me a negative xy. And negative y times the y should be a negative y squared. Don't forget to incorporate these negatives to multiply them as well. Now at this stage we have like terms here in the middle. So those like terms, if you look at these two terms, they're exactly the same. It's like two numbers that are positive and negative. So this will give me a 0 here when I combine those two. So I'm going to have x squared minus y squared, because these two, they cancel each other out. They become 0. Now again, we're going to use the second method to see if we get the same answer, because we noticed that this will guarantee me a mark and a mark, giving me 2 marks, but it might take time having to go through this step. The second method offers an opportunity to save time and to solve the problem much quicker. So if we have the problem again, x minus y, x plus y, what we do here is that we multiply the first term f with the first term, so that we have x squared. Then we multiply the outer term with the outer term, so that we then have plus xy. Then we multiply the inner terms, the terms that are in the inside, right? So this will give me a negative x and a y. Then we multiply the outer terms. So this here is the outer terms, this here are the inner terms, and these are the last terms, right? And then the last terms is negative y and a y. So that will give me negative y squared. Now here again, as you can see, is the same expression as we got at the top. This will give me a 0 because they will simply add to zeros, like they cancel each other out. Then I'm only left with x squared minus y squared. Right, so I've done this by inspection. I didn't do the full method. Right, this is based on an inspection to say if you multiply these terms, you'll still get the same answer. We then move to, before I can move to that question again, here when they mark you 1 mark, a total of 2 marks. Now we go to question 2.3. 2.3, we are given x minus 4, x minus 4. Right, now I'm going to directly use inspection method here to say we have x squared, because I'm saying this times that, the outer term, the first terms. Then I'm doing the outer terms. X minus 4x, it should give me a negative 4x. And we then do the inner terms, where I multiply negative 4 and an x. That should give me negative 4x. Then I multiply the last terms, the negative 4 and the negative 4. Negative and negative will give me a positive. 4 times 4, it's a 16. Now, when we combine these two here, we're going to get an 8. So that our final answer is x squared minus 8x plus 16. Now, your 1 mark will come from here, and the other mark will come from there. And then you have a total of 2 marks. Question 4, we are given 2.4. We are given 1 over 2a plus 1 over 3. Then we have 2a minus 6. Again, when we do this by inspection method, you can see that I'm going to multiply the first term, which is 1 over 2a times the 2a. So what I'm having here is that I'm having 1 over 2a multiplied by 2a. Now the 2 and the 2 would cancel each other, so that I'm left with a times a, which is going to be a squared, right? So here it means I'm going to have a squared when I multiply the first term and the first term. Now we multiply the first term and the last term. So here I'm having 1 over 2a multiplied by negative 6. Now the 2 here would cancel, but here it will go 3 times, so that I'm now left with 3a because I'm multiplying the a and the 3. So this will give me a 3a, negative 3a. So now I'm going to multiply the inner terms, 1 over 3 and 2a. So I'm having 1 over 3 times 2a, right? So this will give me a 2 over 3a. So here we're going to have a plus 2 over 3a. Then we multiply the last terms on the binomials, right? So if you have 1 over 3 multiplied by negative 6, this should give you a negative 6 over 3, which will then become negative 2. And our answer here would be a negative 2. Now we have to combine these two here. To combine these two here, we're going to use our methods of dealing with fractions, right? So here I'm going to have a squared, and here I'm going to multiply this guy by 3 over 3, right? So that I'm going to have a negative 9 over 3a. And this one I'm going to leave it as it is. Remember, multiplying here by 3 over 3 is the same as multiplying by 1, because 3 and 3 cancels and they give you 1. So it's the same as multiplying by 1. So I really didn't change anything here, right? I'm doing that because I want to get the LCM, right? Then here we're going to have a negative 2. Going down here, we then still have an a squared, and here is just, it becomes a simple fraction to work with, because now I'm going to say I keep my LCM as a 3 here. Then I'm going to say 9 plus 2, which really will give me a 7, a negative 7 here, a, right? Then I'm having a negative 2. Then let's do the last question, 2.5. So again, this would be worth 2 marks. They give you 1 mark for simplification and 1 mark for the final answer. So 2.5, we are given 3 to the power 2, 3p to the power 2 minus 2, and we have here 4p to the power 2 plus 5. Again, doing this question, we're going to use inspection method where we say 3p squared times 4p squared. Alright, 3 and 3 will give me a 12. P squared and p squared will give me a 4, right? Because remember here, you keep the base and then you add the exponents. Then we're going to multiply now the outer term with the outer term. 3p squared times a 5. That should give me a positive 15. 3 and a 5 is a 15. Then we have the p squared as it is. Then we multiply the inner terms, negative 2 times negative 4p squared. That should give you a negative 8p squared. Then we have the last terms, negative 2 times a 5. That's simply negative 10. Then now we have to combine these middle terms because they are the like terms, so that we then have the 12p to the power 4, and 15 minus 8 should give you a positive 7p squared minus 10. So the marking again here, it will be simplification and 1 mark for the final answer.